On one hand, our girl Alicia actually made me proud. She truly did pull a villainess move off. She went into a village after 2 years in slumber, and ripped the man's eyeball out. Granted, she also swapped it with her own, which was one of the most wholesome things I've seen, because a blind man goes from not knowing what people look like to being able to see. And she also now is down half her eyesight. Granted, if she really wanted to be a villainess, she would just find some random criminal and steal his eye and swap the bad eye for the good one, but we'll see if she gets there someday. And the fact that not once, but twice, characters called her a straight up bitch. They were getting saucy in this episode. You watch some of the things that happen in this episode, and you're like, damn, that kind of shift my view just a little. She actually does feel like a villainess. But I kind of like how by the end of the episode, it kind of highlights the fact that ultimately, even the characters in question are like, hey, what you see as villainess is not actually what, villainess is. Now, for these characters, they're just game characters turned real now, so, they don't really have the same concept and ideas of villainess as we do. But the fact that she actually does have a kind of villainessy shut down the Prince Duke moment, and that would be a villainess dialogue, but she's visibly upset with it, and even characters behind her like, hey, if that's what a villainess is to you, I don't think so, boss. It's just, I love this girl, and I love how in 2 years she's gotten up to level 91 dark magic, and it's gonna be interesting because there's a lot to discuss, especially with Liz, the heroine, because I know there's a lot of theories surrounding her, but I think most of those theories are wrong. Now, before we jump any further, we do gotta mention we got those full live reactions over on Patreon. If you want to see my full good thought to any of this Villainess history episodes, it's over there exclusively. So, Liz is an interesting character. So, I have never really bought into the theory that she's either A, another isekai character, or B, she's purposely evil. And it's twofold. One, this show has actually avoided most of the cliches and predictable elements that these villainess shows go down. Because if it was a typical show, one of two things usually happens. The villainess is now the heroine, so the game kind of treats her as such, so then the heroine is now the villain. That's kind of the predictable outcome. Or they do go the route of they're both isekai characters. And I think neither one of those is happening. The fact that early on they went the route of no, the villainess is remaining the villainess, just a twisted view of what that word is. And she does remain to be kind of a foil, but she pushes the heroine to be a proper heroine in the future. And when you look at it from the perspective of this is a game turned real, most visual novels have very self-insert bland characters because their entire role is to get to the finish line and anyone and everyone can be their love interest. If you look at it from that perspective, naturally everyone's gonna flock, and naturally she's gonna have this ideal that, we can hold hands, sing kumbaya, and everything's gonna work out because that's how she's programmed. However, especially after a 2-year time skip, I do think we're starting to see that she's actually changing, she's actually evolving. And is there going to be conflict because of that? Of course. And while yes, there's been moments where she's had devious smiles and smirks, that's a red herring to me. That's a misdirect. I don't get the impression, if they went the route she's another isekai reincarnated character, can it work? Yes. But I don't want it to go that route because I've seen that enough, and honestly, it doesn't seem like it'd be the interesting route for a show that's actually fairly interesting. Keeping her an actual heroine MC who's naturally evolving as a game maybe is trying to push back, right? Because there is some spiritual shit at play in terms of how things are operating with characters completely indoctrinated to the heroine. But that's because of game programming from my point of view, you know what I mean? I think it's so much more interesting watching a character open up. She actually did have a bit of a development over these 2 years. So she comes back and she's even self-analyzing the fact that, hey, yeah, I can't be the exact way I was. I immediately just assumed you were the one being wrong, so I froze you. And the fact that, they're not at a perfect stage, but the fact that she recognizes that she can't just take one side's words, even if she naturally assumes that Alicia is always doing some mean shit, she at least has to hear it from the horse's mouth before just assuming she's saying mean shit. So you actually are seeing development. Do I still hate the way that bitch walks and talks? Yes, but she's a necessary evil for a show like this, and I really hope they stick to her just being a character being reprogrammed against a game's will, because that's a really fascinating plot line to me. And it's interesting when you look at the end of the episode, so the prince comes in, and she's almost against her will pushing back. And I'm not sure how to interpret that. And it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes, because on one hand, it feels like a girl who is just socially awkward and said something that she didn't want, which we've all done that at some point in our life, some worse than others. But it could also be a game trying to force the villainess away from the romance option that is destined for the heroine. That could be the case. But I really doubt it's going to be a case of the heroine being... Now, I could be wrong. I'm okay being wrong. I've been wrong plenty on the channel. And I've had theories that have turned out to be spot on that people thought I was crazy for. It's a mixed bag. I think I got like a 60-40 accuracy in terms of 60% wrong, 40% accurate. But sometimes I do land it right on the money, like Train to the End of the World. So I'm going to stick with my gut for this one. I was really confused at first with who that pink-haired girl was, especially when they were talking about Villainess, because like, oh shit, are they going to go that route? Luckily, some people on Reddit mentioned the fact that, hey, that's probably the spirit that the prince talks to, just in whatever humanoid form. And I'm like, oh, that actually makes a lot of sense, actually. And for a girl who's constantly talking about being a villainess, yeah, that kind of makes sense why that term would also be used. But, great episode. She went away for 2 years, trained mad hard, and, I don't know if I'm the only one who found this, like, disrespectful, but in, like, the best way. She's away from her family for 2 years, and we know damn well her dad legitimately loves her. Like, that's been established. And what does she do? She wants to see Grandpa Will first thing. Grandpa Will not only got a hug, but a part of her body to heal. The only way it would have been worse is if dad was also blind or partially blind, and he learned that his daughter would rather give her eye to a random man she met a couple years ago than himself. Like, that's the only way it could have gotten better. But I really did like that scene. I mean, immediately I knew what they were going for when she clouded them in that kind of protective barrier. I'm like, okay, she's going some ancient dark magic here, like, she's gonna cure the blindness. But I thought it was gonna be what, you know, he can now see. He opens his eyes and he can see. So much better the fact that she had to give a part to heal him. It actually would make medical surgeries in this world very interesting, because swapping kidneys or whatever, like, would be very easy, all things considered. But either way, definitely one of the strongest episodes out of the batch. I consider last week to be the weakest, but an episode I very much enjoyed because it was nice seeing it from the side characters' point of views. But this was definitely one of my favorites, and I think for me just cements my feelings on what I feel about the heroine. And I could be completely wrong, but I think this is a very interesting path they're going down. And whatever they decide to pull, I'm interested to see how it develops, because this has definitely become a show that I walked in expecting very little, but have come out relatively impressed week after week. And can't say it often, but this bitch ripped an eyeball out and put it in her own head. Let me know your thoughts, feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, we got this full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Jamabu, Anne, Tade Goldwait, Petalo, One Piece Man, Nicholas Wilhelm, Francis Mondra, and we also have Neko Chibi. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and you all have a good one.